Hello there again, this is Only One Kenobi, Only One, and today I want to talk about the TIE Fighter pilot. This is a video that I've been meaning to do for such a long time, but I've put it off, I've put it on the back burner, probably because, well, I'll discuss why in a minute, actually. I'm going to do three things in one in this video. I'm going to firstly show you, or talk about what we could see return in the vintage collection. I'm going to also show you some figures loose of the TIE Fighter pilot, and then also I want to show you an idea for a completely brand new card back for the TIE Fighter pilot in the future, of which when you think of TIE Fighter pilots, you think of him, or you first ever see him in a cockpit anyway. And there's something about these guys, they're faceless enemies, you know, no emotion, nothing, they're just there to do a job and they will shoot you down unless you shoot them down first. So anyway, the TIE Fighter pilot. Well, in the last vintage collection, we got the TIE Fighter pilot, and here he was. The only thing wrong with this is it's on a Return of the Jedi card back. Now, it's not right because, yes, he was released undoubtedly on a Return of the Jedi card back in the past. However, he was first released on an Empire Strikes Back card, which I showed you a minute ago. I'll show you again. This image here is from Empire Strikes Back. It's the asteroid chase. In fact, because the figure and the bubble are slightly taller, you can't actually see the Millennium Falcon there. You can on this one, though. They are pursuing the Millennium Falcon. And look, all around here is the asteroid. So it would be nice to see it come out on an Empire Strikes Back card. Probably the reason why I've not done this video until now, I've put it on the back burner, is because, as I say, it's kind of like not that essential, because we've already had an Empire, I beg your pardon, we've already had a TIE Fighter pilot come out on a vintage card. But it's just, for the completist, it would be nice to see it on an Empire Strikes Back card, and that's all I'll say, really. But it's probably not that essential. I've done videos on ones I really want to see come out, like, you know, Boba Fett and R2 and Jawa and yada yada. Check my channel for that. Now then, what I'd like to do is show you all the figures we've had loose for the TIE Fighter pilot, if you're interested in him. Going back right the way back to 1982, here he was. I call him Duckface. I never owned him as a child, but when I bought him a couple of years ago for the first time ever, I was quite disappointed. One figure I did have as a kid was the AT-AT driver. Now, when I was a kid, when I owned this figure, it was just one of my favourite figures for some reason. I always imagined that the TIE Fighter pilot would be this figure painted black. Because when you're a kid and when you first see those movies, when you first see the AT-AT driver, you think, oh, it's a white TIE Fighter pilot. But they didn't do it. They gave him a completely different facial sculpt. There might be some subtle differences in the two helmets, I don't know, between an AT-AT driver and a TIE Fighter pilot. But really, they are the same, but in the colour, one white, one black. So anyway, there was the first ever figure. Still a classic, though. Moving on to the Power of the Force. Now, we all know about the Power of the Force, that they're all usually quite bulky and they look like they've been in the gym. But this one ain't that bad at all. It's probably because he's black and you can't really tell the shape of him, or maybe it's something to do with the chest plate there. But as figures go in the Power of the Force line, this ain't bad, so it's quite a good TIE Fighter pilot. Moving then on to the OTC. The OTC released a TIE Fighter pilot, and it ain't bad at all. So the only problem is, oh, here he is here. Now this sculpt here is, I'm pretty sure that the sculpt of this was so well received, or it was so good, that they even recycled this in the future vintage collection. One thing I'll say about it is, it's funny how they just creep in the articulation it has both throughout the ages. He's articulated on one arm, but then the other arm is just dead straight. But anyway, it's more about how it looks. It does look fantastic. There's a guy called Supreme Obliterator. I love his channel. I think he's gone quiet, though. He's not really on YouTube anymore. But he says that this is the best. He's probably quite right. It was certainly someone at Hasbro was happy with it, because it then continued over into the vintage collection. I have a loose vintage collection TIE Fighter pilot here. He is like this one that I showed you from the 2011 vintage collection, but this, as I say, is loose. The only difference is the silver paintwork on the top. I have checked with rebelscum.com or Jedi Business or one of those websites, and apparently the variants, it was like a variant, they did have some silver touch-ups, but anyway, there he is without the helmet. And it's a great figure. It was then carried over into the Legacy Collection Build-A-Droid set, which I'll show you that now. This figure was exactly the same again as the vintage collection one, except for two subtle differences. Check out the fact that there's only one Imperial cog on his helmet there, which is quite interesting. And also, if you look very closely, just here, you'll see some grey stripes going down the nostril. I do believe that he is one of Black Squadron. I quite like the sound of that. Is that some sort of elite corps of the TIE fighter pilots? Are these the guys who chased them on the end of Star Wars when you're taking an awful risk, Vader? This had better work. I'm not so sure about that. But anyway, Black Squadron is the name of one of the leagues of the TIE fighter pilots. And they're moving on to this figure now, which I have to say is my best. And I'm doing it, Finny. This is my nephew Finn's figure, by the way. Hi, Finn. Finally doing this video, buddy. He's kindly let me borrow this figure, which I will return to him. But this is a 5 points of articulation figure. And I tell you something, they have nailed it with this figure. The helmet sculpt is absolutely spot on. When I look at that figure, I see this guy right there. It is unbelievably good. It was released, or Finn got hold of his, he got a TIE Striker about a year ago when Rogue One came out. That's the vehicle, that's the specialist TIE fighter vehicle, but it came with one of these pilots inside. I don't doubt that this figure was also released on its own in one of the lines, most likely probably around about the Star Wars Rebels era, I don't know. But that brings me back actually to the AT-AT pilot. Now this is also an exceptionally good figure, 5 points of articulation again, but they are awesome. It's almost like Hasbro nailed it. So here's the point now, folks. As I say, these two figures came out around about the same sort of time. I just thought I'd show you them side by side. I'm not advocating bringing back 5 points of articulation on vintage cards, but hey, if they are going to give us another TIE fighter pilot, be it on an Empire Strikes Back card or on a potential brand new card, please, I hope that they use the molds they use for these guys, because these are awesome. So there you go, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Finn, for letting me borrow your figure. This has been Only One Kenobi. Only one. Out. Stay in attack formation. Yes, sir.